Who are you? No, for real, like, who are you for real, for real? Are you your name? Are you your job? Are you your associates, people you're connected to? How do you define yourself? How do you identify yourself? So that's really what we're here to talk about today, man. We're here to talk about the concept of having an identity, or the importance and relevance of identity. Oftentimes, issues between individuals or conflicts, the root of it is having something to do with a person's identity. Take, for example, you have individuals from a particular city or a particular neighborhood. When they are in their neighborhood, they go at each other's throats. They fight each other, try to do things to one another. They try to take each other out in some cases. But yet, those same individuals, when they're outside of their environment, in another environment, somehow they seem to get along. And in fact, they may even band together against individuals from another area or from whatever area they are in. So why is that? It comes down to identity, how we identify, what we identify with. I'm gonna take it back a little bit. When I asked you, who are you? Are you your name? Are you your occupation? Are you a summation of the people that you're connected to? In reality, you are all of those things and yet none of those things, not entirely. Because the thing that you actually are, or what I believe, what I know to believe that we all are, is something that really can't be defined by the roles that we have assumed here, or the identities that we have come to assume in this, as you would say, 3D reality. The truth is, you might see yourself as, let's say your name is Joe, okay? You identify with Joe because since the time you were a baby, you were being called Joe. You learned to identify yourself with the name Joe, or whatever your last name is. You're Joe. That's who you are. You identify yourself by that name, by that designation. And let's say you were born in Germany. Well, I don't know too many Germans named Joe, so let's pick another location. Let's say you were born in Utah, all right? And you Joe from Utah. Joe from Utah is another layer of your identity. My name is Joe. I'm from Utah. Take it a step further. Utah is where? In the United States. So I'm an American. I'm Joe from Utah, and I'm an American. You go to a school. Let's say you pick a school you go to. You go to Yale University, or you go to, Brown or Harvard or whatever, Cornell, whatever school you go to. That is another layer of identity that you have assumed. I am Joe from Utah. I'm an American citizen who went to this university. Each one of these designations are being assimilated into what you would call an identity, which in reality, they're distinct identities that you utilize in different situations. Let me go further. Let's say you go to your university, you get your degree, all right, and then you decide you want to get yourself a job, a nice job. Boom, you find a job as, let's say you become a doctor, right? You go to med school and you become a doctor. That is another layer of identity. You are Joe from Utah, the American citizen who went to, let's say, Cornell. I don't know if they have a med school, but I believe they do. And you are a doctor. That is another identifying layer of what you have chosen to identify with. All right? And let's say that your time as a doctor is very fruitful for you. You're very successful as a doctor. So then that adds another layer on top of your identity, or another aspect or another identity that you are tacking on to. You're not just a doctor, you are a successful doctor. See what I'm saying? So let's take somebody else. Let's say Carl. Okay. Carl from Georgia, also an American from Georgia. Let's say instead of going to school, he goes to the military. He joins the Air Force, So now he is Carl from Georgia, an American citizen, a member of the United States Air Force, an airman. He does his time, does his service, becomes a veteran. So that's another layer of identity. And I really want to point this out, that the importance of each and every aspect of this when you're talking about defining a person and who you are, who you are, and how you identify yourself. You have your name. That's the first level of identity. Now, mind you, this is me talking. This is loose interpretations. I'm not actually identifying these by their actual level that they would be interpreted. This is my interpretation of when I mention levels. So the first level is your name. That's the first thing most of us come to identify ourselves with outside of that innate knowing of self, is your name. And then people that you're connected to. You are Harold and Martha's son. You are Bobby's brother, or, so-and-so's sister. Those designations, as we get older in life, I guess, diminish as we tack on more associations and more identities. But as a child, those are very big parts of your identity. The people that you are, connected to. And depending on your culture, that may be pervasive throughout your life. Different cultures have different designations of identities. And in America, we have a public school system. Maybe you go to private school, which is another degree of identity. I went to public school. I went to private school. So I'm going with this. Different ways that we not just differentiate, but things we identify with. And then at a certain age, you come to the age of, sexual maturity. You start orienting yourself one way or another. You know what I mean? That becomes another identity. The type of people that you are attracted to and would want to be intimate with in that way. That's another assumption of identity. Even at a much younger age, there is the gender identity that is acquired very early in life. I believe by the time you're 2 or 3 years old, you've typically made enough observations to decide, at least at that time, what your gender is. Now, for a lot of people, there, like with the LGBT, there's, from what I hear, some say it's body dysmorphia, where at some point in life, you don't agree with that designation or that identity, and you begin to try to form a new identity. Now, I'm not getting into that because I'm not as familiar with it, not well versed in that, so I'm not going to speak on things I don't feel like I understand too well. But I do know that that is another branch of branching off of identity. But typically, they say that the gender identity is formed in early childhood, around 2 or 3 years old. You kind of know what you want to identify as, typically. So many of us, all of us, have several different identities that are more prevalent in certain environments than in others. What do I mean by that? Okay, so take, for example, when I was in the military, right? I was stationed at a duty station. I'm going to be vague, and 3 other service members that I served with. 2 of them were Puerto Rican, and 1 was black. They were real cool. They were real click tight. And I'm not going to mention the names, because of the nature of the story. They got into some trouble. They were having some trouble adjusting to the military lifestyle. Some aspects of it, and they got into some trouble. I'm gonna put it like that. And these guys were close. Like the 3 of these guys got each other's names tatted on their arms. Like they were like a clique, supposedly. They were tight. They got into some trouble. They got picked up by the authorities, and when they were questioned, how the law will interrogate you. They put you in separate rooms. Then they interrogate you. Well, apparently at some point, a discussion was had between the two of the individuals, the two Puerto Ricans, and they decided that they were going to stick together because they're both Puerto Rican, and then they're gonna, put it on this guy, say he did everything. And that's what they did. They corroborated against the other friend, and he got a significantly longer time than they did, if I remember correctly, if I have all the facts right. Now, you could say, oh, that was racist, or they were racist. Now, I couldn't provide substantial evidence against that, but what I would suggest that beyond it being necessarily traditional racism, what was going on was a clash of identities. You see, they had an identity as service members, they had identity as friends connected to one another, and they also had their ethnic identities. Two of them were Puerto Rican, one was black, and in that particular instance, their identity as Puerto Ricans overrode the other identities as we're so-called brothers, or we're service members, or whatever any other identities that they would have shared with that other individual. That was overrode in that context by their ethnicity or nationality, or however you want to call it. That being said, things don't necessarily always play out like that. In certain contexts, or in a certain context, depending on how prevalent their identity is to the individuals involved in an event, it could go totally different. I've seen, service members of differing, colors, colluding against somebody else who may be of the same color as one of them. And you can tell in that moment their identity as service members, or it overrode their ethnicity in that context. And a lot of times we would have a clear picture of human behavior and human situations and interactions when we look at things from what I would presume to be a clearer lens than just saying, oh, they're sexist, they're racist, or they're this. Nah, I can't say that those aren't things, because those are definitely things, and those are definitely relevant things in our society. But I think oftentimes we lose the humanity aspect when we do that we're all people, we're all humans, and we're more alike typically than we are different. You're going to find more similarities. It's just when we cling too hard to an identity, or we identify with a particular thing too strongly, it clouds our ability to see the humanity in another, because they have attached themselves to other identities that we don't identify with. So then we see them as other as opposed to together. Oftentimes, man, that is the crux. That is why I remember when I mentioned that situation earlier about people being from a particular neighborhood, and when they're within that neighborhood, they're at each other's throats, man. They're at each other's throats. But as soon as they go somewhere different and they say, oh, you from such and such, you from such, yeah, all of a sudden they can be click tight, because their identity as being from that neighborhood or that city, it supersedes the other identities in whatever new environment they found themselves in. It comes down to how we identify. So many conflicts are a result of conflict in identity. So many internal and external conflicts are about identity. And by when I say internal conflict, I mean this is going to be a hypothetical example. A service member, because I'm a veteran, so it's an easy reference for me to use. Where I keep mentioning veterans. You take a service member, let's say they're in the National Guard or the Army Reserve, and a domestic dispute breaks out to where they're called to assist, if you will. And let's say one of those service members is from the neighborhood that they have to go in and deploy to make some things shake. Now that person is going to be in real conflict because on one hand, they have the identity of being a service member. Then they have the identity of, depending on what ethnicity is the majority of that neighborhood, they may have to reconcile that identity. And then just the identity of being from that neighborhood. Now, for most of the people that I've spoken with, their identity as being from where they are going to be more prevalent. Now, I don't know, I've never seen that play out, so that could change if they ever actually had to do that. I don't know what, but just from speaking to people, the prevalent consensus is that if a situation like that arose, they would choose to they would identify with where they were from as opposed to their commitment to whatever service they're a part of. Now, like I said, I don't know if that would I don't know how that would actually play out. It might be a little more ambiguous than you would imagine, but I digress. That's a form of internal conflict. You decide which identity am I going to align myself with in this situation. Am I going to identify myself as Joe from this place, or am I going to identify myself with my occupation? Or you might identify yourself as, or I'm a serious person in one context. In another context, you might identify yourself as, well, you're a conversation starter. And depending on the situation, you might have to decide, well, am I going to be this conversation starter in this instance, or am I going to be the serious individual? Because it might be a playful environment, and you might have to decide which identity you're going to align with the most, and which one is going to prevail, and how you carry yourself and how you interact with your environment. The external conflicts is, like I mentioned earlier, even individuals who have friends, who might hate each other. Do you identify with this friend, your relationship with this friend, or do you identify with that friend? You know what I mean? Like, so it really all depends. I feel like identity is a really big thing, and it's one of the elements that I think is really drives human behavior and drives our society to move the way it moves, why people behave the way they behave, why they hang out with who they hang out with. And I'll use another example again from the military, and I'm sure this is pervasive in all types of job environments. When we have our duties and we're in formation and do all that stuff, people of all different, colors, creeds, races, backgrounds, we all come together for the facilitation of a mission or the accomplishment of a mission and a goal, work together, and everything's yay, and we do our thing. And then we have downtime, a little lunch break or whatever, a smoke break, if you will. I used to always observe, how people would move on the smoke breaks. And one thing I noticed is that you would see people of this color go over there. You see people of that color go over there. And then you see people of another color go over there. Now, looking at the optics of it, you think, oh, this is some unspoken segregation. You think, oh, they just is racist. Everybody's racist against each other. They go into their own. But in reality, it's not necessarily racism. What it is people identifying with people they can relate to and are familiar with. If you're white and you grew up in an all-white town, or you grew up mostly around white people, you're not going to be as familiar with black culture or black customs, or how to speak, or what's right to say, what's wrong to say. Vice versa. A black person's not going to be as comfortable around a group of white people, not to be antisocial, but if you have an opportunity to converse with individuals in your downtime, you're probably going to choose the people who you're most familiar with because it's the most comfortable. You don't have to go through all the social awkwardness of trying to figure out what's right to say, what's wrong to say, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. You don't have to think about any of that. You kind of already have an understanding on, the culture. So you gravitate towards people who look like you or who are familiar with you, who identify with the same things that you identify with. And that goes for any, we're not just whites and blacks, Hispanics, Asians, like everybody does. And that's just a testament that we're all the same. We're all people. So we all do the same things. It's just the filter or the lens of identity makes it seem separate, but we all do the same things for the most of the same reasons. I'm not saying everybody's we're identical. There's definitely differences, but like I said before, I feel like we're more alike in a lot of ways than we are different. If we choose to see past the superficial differences to see how related we really are and how similar we really are. So that goes back into what we choose to identify with. And I think the closer we get to our real identity and we start dropping the superficial identities like your name, your job, your ethnicity, where you're from, all this. And I say superficial because they really are superficial. Do they have relevant impact in our society the way it is right now? Yes, of course. So when I say superficial, it does not mean that for some individuals, you still shouldn't be cognizant of those differences in cases of discrimination or possibly safety reasons. If you, like I said, depending on your ethnicity or your gender association or your sexual orientation, or even your actual gender, just men and women, not even if you a part of the LGBT community, just difference between men and women, all those things, your actual sex, all those things are relevant in the sense that due to people having strong identities, we are still prone to experiencing discrimination, harassment, endangerment. We're still prone to those things. So I'm not saying just be ignorant and act like none of those elements in our society don't exist. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the closer we collectively get to understanding the reality of what we are and understanding who we are, that those things become apparently superficial, because it's not you. Who you are is not your job. It's not where you're from. It's not what color you are or what ethnic you are. It's not where you went to school. It's not your job. It's not none of that. It's not none of that. I mean, your name. You call yourself that to make it simple, because who you actually are is so hard to identify or classify. I don't think it really can be. Really can't be described. So to make it simple on ourselves, we give ourselves names. Hey, I'm Jeremy. I'm Jacob. A lot of J's, huh? I'm Kathy. Like they're just designations that makes it easy for us to identify one another. But in reality, our true identity, man, is of divine nature. It's of a divine nature, and cannot be encapsulated in the little boxes that we have put ourselves in. And when we realize what we really are and how insignificant these things we've identified are, man, I believe that'll be a beautiful day in our societies. Not just society, all societies. I believe when we're able to, as a people, and by people I mean globally, like mankind, the human race, we will be able to elevate. We'll be able to elevate, man. But until then, we assume these identities, we operate within those identities until we're able to identify our true self. And ultimately, that's the journey I'm on. That's the journey I believe we all should learn to be on. The discovery of self, discovery of who you are, what you are. A lot of us feel like we have the answers. Well, I'm a doctor. I'm a Muslim, I'm a Christian, you know, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a plumber, I'm an Uber driver, I'm a YouTuber. You know, these, it's not who you are. What you do, who you are, what your name is, what you call yourself, where you're from. It's not who you are. It's where, it's what, it's why. It's not who. And the closer we get to that answer, the who, hey man, that's what we're here for. You say, why are we here? Why are we here on earth? To discover who you are. That's it. All this we experience are experiences to help open the book that is you, to put letters on the page, to turn the page, to read the pages that already have content in it. It's a very interactive book, your life. It's an interactive book. It's ironic in the Bible. I wouldn't say ironic. I'd say ironic is the wrong way to say it. But in the Bible, they reference the book of life. But your life really is a book of life. You are currently writing pages every day, and yet there's so many pages that are already filled in by something that you can't remember or is beyond, that's already there, that you have to discover. And as you're discovering more about yourself in this book, you're adding notes, you're putting footnotes, and you're adding more, you put more content on pages, maybe even drawing pictures. You know, that is your book of life. And that's what we're here. We're here to write our book. It is, you know, and I can't tell you who you are, because that's your job and that's your journey to discover who you are. Any more than I can't tell you who I am. I'm still learning. I'm still on that journey to find out who I am. You know, and for those of you who you feel like you already know who you are, I can't tell you any different. You know, but I would suggest that if who you are is determined by what you identify with, I would ask you just to, you know, dig a little deeper and really consider, you know, what about that designation of that identity that makes you you? Like, seriously, like what about that is really you, and not just what was assumed, you know, what was given to you? Because we're given a lot. But just because somebody give you something doesn't necessarily mean that it belongs to you. But I can give you a box of rocks, a bag of rocks to carry around. It's only yours if you take ownership of it, if you identify with it, if you assume it. But you don't have to take it. Most of us are young when we're given a lot of different things, given a lot of baggage. And we carry it around like it's ours, like it's us. And we wonder why life gets heavy. But in reality, we have to realize that, you know, a lot of this stuff that we're carrying isn't ours. It's something that was given to us. You know, a lot of times, most times, you know, well-meaning. You know, I'm giving you this to help you in life. I'm giving you this. This helped me get through my situation, and this was valuable to me. And I love you, so I'm gonna give you this to help you. But you might not need what they needed. You might need something else. You know, if you're a first-class swimmer, you might not need mountain climbing equipment. You know, this person's a mountain climber. That's all they know. But they love you, so they want to help you out. So they give you their mountain climbing equipment. That's not gonna help you at all. You're trying to swim. And then, so, you know, if they don't have anything to give you, if they don't have any swimming gear to give you, what they try to say, well, no, you a mountain climber. Only thing I can give you is mountain climbing equipment. You a mountain climber. And then we say, well, I guess I'm a mountain climber. No, not a mountain climber. You're a swimmer. And sometimes it takes us having experiences, learning about ourselves to discover, man, I'm really not a mountain climber. I'm a swimmer. I'm supposed to be a swimmer. I need to take all this stuff off because it's weighing me down. It's keeping me from doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know how long this video is going to be already. So I'm not gonna hold you up too long, but I just want to put some things on your brain. Challenge your identities. We all have identities, and I'm not saying that we have to dissolve our identities. I think at some point, the closer we get to our true identity, that happens naturally. So I'm not saying to go in and try to say, well, I'm not going to identify with this. Nah, man, we need our egoic identities to get through this life, man. So if you decide to go on the journey of self-discovery, man, you know, it'll happen in its own time, man. But look, I ain't gonna talk your ears off. I appreciate you tuning in. Those are my thoughts on identity. Let me know in the comments if y'all agree, disagree, or if you have any input, or you know, anything to add, or if you say I'm dead wrong, or if you say, hey, you right, hey, whatever. I want to hear your thoughts, man. I really want to advance this conversation. So if you have anything to say, man, or if you have anything to add, or whatever, just let me know. I love y'all, man. I really mean that. We in this together. And man, take care of yourselves. Stay blessed. Stay high vibe. However you want to articulate it, take it that way. I love y'all. Take care of yourselves. Peace.